And fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War update for the 29th of July 2027. I'm your host, the host, David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games, Into the Housebound, and The Erotic Tales from the Empire, Part 1 and 2 out now. Part 3 is to come soon. I promise, I swear, I'm working on it. That's my first book, and it's the first in the series. All right. All my links are in the link tree. And thank you all for tuning in. And while this terrible war continues, I'll continue to bring you comprehensive news and updates from both sides of the war so you can decide what's really going on. Let's begin. And we start with the Ukrainian war map. Right. Whoops. There we go. It's back alive. Alive, I tell you. All right, so we don't have many strikes recorded today, but yes, the usual suspects. Russia continued its campaign from yesterday in a series of multiple strikes on logistics targets, particularly fuel depots, in the forward areas of Ukraine, focusing on also shipping and logistics in Mykolaiv, Odessa, but they also hit communications in Kharkiv. Now, different reports have different things going on, but was Kiev hit? Well, we don't know. Was anywhere else hit? Don't really say. And we do know they attacked the port. This was retaliation for Ukraine's overnight attacks on Kerch. But there was also shelling in Donetsk, which the Ukrainians today have not admitted to. So because it's reported by Russia, the majority of people out there will say never happened. Now, of course, there was the usual shelling in Sumy. I think that is to do with electronic warfare and listening stations in the northern border region. Of course, Russia claims they're all operated by the CIA and Americans. You know, the usual round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. And whenever it comes to the CIA will spend 20 years denying what they were involved in, anything, and then 20 years later they go, yes, it was us, and move on, because no one really cares. No one's going to be held accountable. So it really doesn't matter in the end what I say. Well, apparently people don't like what I say. Too bad, so sad. The truth hurts the spanked monkey. If the monkey wasn't spanked by my words, it wouldn't be squealing, now would it? So obviously I spoke a truth they don't want to hear, they don't want others to know, and that is Ukraine is the instigator of the war by provocation. And now they want to play Tin Pot Hero, where they put on a tin, pretend they're the sheriff of the world, and that use Ukraine as their proxy, so they can run around saying, "Look at us, we're winning." Well, I would say you are winning if you are on the winning side, which you're not. But you're not on the front line, so you have won nothing. You're not a participant. If you've got a Ukrainian flag in your bio, does not make you a participant in the war, does not entitle you to any glory. It's just your selfish narcissism, patting yourself on the back yet again. But that is liberalism every time, is it not? Pathetic narcissism. But there were fires in Kharkiv today, big fires, according to the Ukrainians. A big warehouse fire. Well, I kept telling you, anything you could do to Russia, they could do back in spades. Right, and of course, across the northern frontier, they are pushing and have taken control of this border zone here, and they are pushing and pushing hard to expand the buffer zone. Now, the map is deciding to some tiles aren't going to load. I'm sorry, they're going to be grayed out. I don't know why. Obviously, probably because they're being worked on. So there could be something going on up here. We'll find out tomorrow. But there is fighting in the buffer zone as we speak. And there was fighting reported in multiple locations today across Ukraine. Yes, I'm well aware they also could be internet errors. So here we go. We do have fighting in uh, the lineman area in Nova and the town here, which Russia is slowly absorbing, but hey, deciding not to load. Okay. Gosh. Alright. Map was loading, now it's not. Okay, there's been hardly any changes to the map anyway. The advance towards, you can see they've now got a little bit. Yeah, there's the marker. The Russians have not been pushed back. They are pushing outwards and upwards. They are now on the edge of this the northern edge of the industrial park to close off access to it. As you can see, they've crossed the road, probably on the road, I should say. They are probably fighting the zigzag of maze round here and here. And they are fighting here to they're basically back attacking they've gone around and back attacking the Ukrainians from the north, which because yeah, the Russians are coming. What's that sound behind us? Yeah, exactly. Told you, flanking. All right, so despite the fact there's fighting up here, they've decided to draw the map without the bulge today, but there were earlier reports of Russian forces operating in this area on the outskirts of town. Reports of Russian assaults on and in, but not. These towns have not fallen, though the Russians are in. But yeah, they're still consolidating their position here. They're still pushing up here. They're still pushing in this area. As you can see, it's there are parts of this map not learning. Okay, still fighting along here. Reports of fighting here through the day. The Russian bulge here is halted for now, and they seem to be focused on filling this gap in, taking on the Ukrainians here. But yeah, they still have these two towns here, although the Russians are starting to push on Tiru. They're pushing in other areas, of course, to cut this off, and the march on Orkiv seems to have halted, and of course the march on Zaporozhye continues, but the Russians haven't made much progress there either. So, other than one small insignificant town, the Russians really haven't advanced at all today, although they are continuing a missile onslaught. They are spreading their missiles out and hitting their targets. So, the Ukrainian air defences predominantly, while maybe focused on the cities and that, it's like, your priorities is obvious. That political is trying to protect the political and its base rather than the country, and eventually, the country will turn against them, although that's only an historical assumption. It's usually the case, but not always. I mean, look how long it took the people to turn against Rome. I would dearly love your support, and one way of supporting the channel is to support me on Kickstarter with my Empire Valves official non-suitable for work art book. But of course, with Kickstarter, you can't put the non-suitable stuff up on display. So what we have is Sora, yes, the effervescent Empress. Coming soon, July 8th, knock wood. Now, it's understood that Trump and Zelensky met today to discuss reviving the Russian peace talks and discussing finer details of deliveries of Patriot missiles. Even though they're made in Europe, that's a US factory. He is only a permanent customer. Well, he's bought rather than be a customer. Sorry, they're a business. They basically they invest and get their investment returns in the form of missiles, Patriot interceptors. Now they are allegedly, supplying technical support, aka cheap labor, in order to produce more missiles. Now, they met after the funeral for Lindsey Graham. Actually, they met before and after the funeral for Lindsey Graham. Apparently, while Zelensky and Trump were frosty, Lindsey Graham and Zelensky and Zelensky were tight, and Lindsay had visited Ukraine shortly before his death to talk about the deal, the sanctions on Russia, and any last minute companies or individuals to be added to the sanctions list. Now, there was talk about adding Iran, and it seems Zelensky was on board with that, along with Zelensky and Netanyahu. They all had their little meeting following the funeral. They spoke for nearly an hour, according to news. They're going to witness the vote on the bipartisan on the Uni-Party package. And yeah, this was 2 years in the making, and there's basically nothing that can be done now. As for the drone and other packages, yeah, about $1.1 billion, which is insignificant in the amount of money spent on this war. But the real meeting, of course, that was, what did we say? Gay? Was Andy Barham and Zelensky, pretty much. The unelected Prime Minister of Britain meeting the unelected President of Ukraine. And don't tell me Zelensky was elected, because his term is up long ago. That makes you unelected. Right, so Kiev has warned Iran against retaliation, and they call it escalation. I'm sorry, but in war, if you attack someone, that gives them the right to attack you. You can't. This is what Ukraine has done often. They attack, and then this is typical liberal tactic, actually, is to attack and then film the response and say, look, Russia attacked us. In this case, it is Ukraine who attacked Iran and then expects Iran not to attack back. Now, they're claiming they targeted Russian warships, denying any harm to civilian vessels or individuals. This is pure gaslighting. Because Ukraine, a couple of days ago, said they attacked a cargo ship bound for Russian ports. And Russia escalated. And Ukraine then attacked a Iranian flag ship. And Iran said, it's illegal, it must end. And Zelensky said, we didn't attack your ship. It's like, you said so. Here's the news articles. Nah, that's just disinformation. There's no proof that it's Ukrainian. So that's the kind of children we're dealing with when it comes to the Ukraine war, is that, they'll just say anything to whatever's the most convenient, expedient, what makes them look good, although ultimately it is nothing but childish because they have no morals, no standards. But Iran, yeah, they will not. You've basically, you've attacked people who are very proud. Okay? You attack them, they are not going to forget. And they accuse, and of course, is accusing Israel of being behind the attack in an attempt to drag Europe into the war. They're talking about escalating the war against Iran in order to get Iran to attack Ukraine, so that Zelensky will say, hey, look, Russia and its allies are fighting us. Now you have to send troops to... This is all Zelensky's manipulation to escalate the war to World War III. The globalist agenda to kill off millions of you useless eaters so that they can have their utopian paradise where they just walk around the ruins of civilization. Because remember, they don't care that the buildings will crumble, that there's going to be nobody left to maintain them. They don't care because they're going to die. They know they're going to die and they don't care anymore. They don't care if civilization ends because they're going to die long before that happens. So they don't care. They don't really have children who are going to inherit the earth. You look at most of them, right? They've just got some, transient relationship at best. None of them, like every time they tell you about their glorious marriage or whatever, 10, 20 years later, you never see them together again. It's all bullshit. That they're just married for the tax benefits or the to have multiple names on the trust, to form a family trust, whatever. You can't. Yeah, it's all meaning. Everything doesn't mean anything to them. Everything to them is just a game. They're childish, they're immature, they're bored, and most of the time they have some form of guilt because they have done wrong to people. They have wronged people. And often they know they've done wrong, but they justify by saying it was necessary to get ahead. Now, again, Ukraine is claiming our actions are solely defending our country against Russian aggression. Solely cope and seethe. Cope and seethe. Right? Ukraine always paints itself as the victim. But will they ever accept responsibility? No one's going to hold Zelensky accountable for his crimes. I'm sorry, but this is noise, Maria. You have made these claims before. You are never going to get the UN to put Zelensky on trial for crimes against humanity. The International Criminal Court is too busy wanting to put Trump in prison for whatever made-up crimes they can pin on him to get him out of office so that they can continue on with their looting and unimpeded crimes against humanity. Okay? You are nothing but a road bump to the globalist agenda. And Russia has yet to realize that they are just part of China's strategy. That any moral grandstanding will mean nothing in the West. The right has decided to ignore you. The left has decided to ignore you. The moderates don't want to know either because they don't want the hassle of being attacked by the Trump or the Russia war hawks. Okay, the people who need an enemy in this world and that simpletons, right? They need an enemy. They need someone to blame. And I know during the Cold War, Russia accepted that responsibility as the enemy because they too needed an enemy. But right now, the only country who needs enemies are the United Soviet States of Europe and the United Soviet States of China. Those two both need enemies, and they both decided that Trump is the enemy and that Russia, Ukraine will be the proxy to kick off World War III. But who knows if this war ends and could end? Trump is trying to make sure it doesn't escalate. Now, Trump's been pragmatic about it, but Ukraine has fired drones over Russian regions, and they have once again Russian air defenses are claiming to have destroyed most of them. Now, this is usual. They do. Both sides destroy a lot of drones every day. Both sides have put a lot into air defenses and continue to put a lot into air defenses. And a lot of people are putting their lives on the line for their country. The politicians, however, I mean, why can't the West just have a moral standard? Because power, wealth, privilege, it corrupts the mind. It really does. These people are so twisted in their goals. They just can't tell you up front what they're up to. Because if you realise what they're up to, you would oppose them. You would realise that Ursula von der Leyen is a criminal. You would realise Zelensky's a criminal. Why you cry about Putin and can't see that he is no different from Xi or Lulu in Brazil or Timu Obama or Alexandria Occasional Cortex or any of the other retarded scumbags out there who pretty much can't see past their own ambition. But is Putin so bad to want to stop Russia from falling to communism again? No. At least he has that. Whereas Ursula von der Leyen, she's happy for the Europe to become fascist as long as it's her high heel digging into your neck. And that is where Zelensky comes in. He's the distraction. And who's this other wanker? Antonia, some diplomat. Yeah. Well, the Ukrainian anti-corruption body has pointed out yet again about corruption in Ukraine, embezzlement. Who is this guy? Well, he's your typical so-called philanthropist who seems to always get richer no matter what. And that the whole thing was that Fedorov was on the verge of ousting Zelensky for corruption, that he was getting too popular, and that he was going to back the parliament to dismiss Zelensky, so Zelensky got rid of him. Because remember, Zelensky is backed by the deep state, and the deep state spies on everyone and everything, and they warned Zelensky that the parliament was going to vote him out, and so he got rid of Fedorov, because that's what dictators do. They don't wait for elections. They appoint and anoint their successors when they so please and then they so choose. And round it goes. Where it stops, no one knows. But eventually you'll realise that fascism is Europe, that the communist states, the Democrats, the blue states are going to be Chinese communists, and that the Indians and Mexicans and Pakistanis are going to carve up the southern states, the so-called red states, using Africans as their useful idiots, and basically the Islamists and Chinese and Indians are going to fight in a perpetual war to stay in power. And if you don't believe me, well, what do you think Orwell was trying to warn us about? Although 1984 doesn't play out how I said it, but I'm just giving you the scenario how it goes right now. If the neo-colonial power India wins, and the neo-colonial power China wins, and India and China are going to side with fascist Europe against the United States. This is why they're afraid. This is why they're destroying England. Not because they're afraid of the English Empire, but so that America doesn't have a foothold in Europe. Yes, because Airstrip won. See, they're trying to play out 1984, but not how the novel itself played out. Now, a town no one's heard of. Well, you can look it up if you want. It's probably insignificant, and will say it's still contested. Every town is only temporarily occupied, So that's the state of the war. It's a shit show. People are dying, and the Liberals are cheering it on because they're about as because all liberalism ends in fascism. It's a endless war. That's why they're not interested in real medical research. They're not interested in. It's why they don't come up with solutions to cancer or diabetes or any common ailments, because they need constant chaos. They need all these things to fundraise off. They need all these causes to distract you with, so that they can enrich themselves over and over and over again. And when society can no longer bear, they let it collapse. They retreat to their island paradises and watch the world burn. And then they have a renaissance and start with classical liberalism all over again. We have no idea how many times have collapsed civilizations, because most of the civilizations that collapsed are long forgotten. And now they've got their useful idiots over in the Middle East destroying evidence of the past civilizations, destroying the evidence that Greeks had a much bigger civilization across Western Europe, and the Celts had an even bigger civilization that was 20,000 years in the making. And you're going to say, why weren't they scientifically and technically advanced? Because look around you. They reach a certain point of technology and then they start spinning the wheels, stop progressing. And then they turn your idea of progress into sexual politics. And they distract you with minor border wars and have you afraid that the big bad bear is going to cross that border and take over your lands. Meanwhile, what they don't tell you is that they crossed the Rhine and took over your land centuries ago and are not your real government. Your real government was killed centuries ago. Your kings, your leaders were all rounded up and killed by either the Romans or the Germans or the French invaders. And they invaded and killed each other's leaders. Around and round it goes, until the point there's only the mafia left and their lackeys in endless wars. and they constantly fight each other to keep because if they don't have chaos, if they get weak, and weak leaders get torn down by the people because the people go, why is England ruled by mafia dons, by Pakistanis, by Germans, by French, and not by Englishmen? And why is it no matter who I elect, the same things keep happening? Because the bureaucracy, all the heads of parliament, all the parliamentarians, they appoint the children of their masters into positions of power in, the unions. They have the same thing. They have the same structures over and over again, where you have these big organizations that are so inert, so inflexible, that it's almost impossible to get anyone genuine who isn't some foreign immigrant / descendant of invaders into positions of power. It's like the natives of every country is oppressed by the immigrants from other countries, or the invaders. This world, all these people running around saying decolonize. Well, you first, you go to Pakistan, you go to England, tell all the Pakistanis to leave London, or tell why you talk about decolonialisation on one hand, and on the other you're telling native Irishmen that they're in the wrong for opposing a Somali running as prime minister. So yeah, but that's what liberalism is. Okay, it's intersectionality. It is making sure that the people can't unite against their close-knit community of invaders and parasites. And the Ukraine war is a distraction. And I'm going to keep bringing it up. I'm going to keep hammering home the lies and bring it to you in 4K as best as I can, that the people in power cannot be trusted. Right? Now, no matter what system we come up with, liberals will always find a way to undermine it. They will that is the perpetual war that we face, right? The Bible tells you about perpetual war, even against evil. But of course, you have all these do-gooders who think they know better, that they're going to instigate Christ's kingdom. No, only Christ will do that. Only God will do that on his time, on his terms. You have no faith if you demand or think that Jesus has to return now to implement the kingdom to make your life better. No, you have to have faith and follow the command, and yet tell people, and you can't tell me what to do. Well, isn't that what you're telling me what to do? And of course you get those who say, oh, but sloppy Ukrainer. Well, if you love Ukraine, why aren't you there? Exactly, because they're parasites. People lie. You'll watch the best evidence I see with my ears, right? I don't believe their words. I judge by their actions. Their actions speak louder than words. And does Ukraine want peace? No. Their actions are antithetical to peace. Opening more drone factories, demanding more missiles is not something you do to plan peace. And if you say peace through strength, then what are you going to do when Ukraine takes your word up for peace through strength and does a North Korea and gets nuclear weapons? Because, it's the paranoia of North Korea that led them. And by the way, North Korea doesn't have nuclear weapons for America. And America is only the young enemy. The old enemy is China. See, they expected you to defend them against China when you didn't. When you Because you were supposed to be Russia's ally. You weren't supposed to oppose North Korea. You're supposed to help North Korea. See, this is the problem with politics and strange bedfellows. North Korea took you at your word that you were a Russia's ally and supporting Russia's war effort. So that meant, and that you were supporting the global union. No, those were just words. Truman and Roosevelt represented the American unions, not the global union and globalist agenda at the time, but did want a global humanity under them. But the rest of the globe said, no, you don't get to choose for us who represents us. And so you had an ideological misfire and that has created situations that we still can't unravel today because North Korea can't trust us. And I'm telling you now, the best solution to North Korea is two-state solution. Right? Let them have it. They're Koreans. Let them decide for themselves. Yes, I know they can't decide for themselves, but eventually someone will. Right? Things take time, and I know humans hate that. I know people are impatient. I'm not saying to stop pushing for change, but you have to be careful and understand that when change happens, it's not going to happen the way you want it. Just like um, the Vietnam War didn't turn out the way you wanted, just like how even today, um, how Ukraine war isn't turning out how people wanted it. The liberals just can't learn you cannot manifest destiny. You cannot control this tiger by the tail. You right? They're trying to steer the world as if it's their personal ship, their personal playground. And I'm telling you, it's an out of control train, and most of the elites are just smiling, coping, and seething. And at some point, their cart is going to crash. And when it does, it's neither going to be communism, it's always capitalism. There is only capitalism, and you will eventually learn that lesson the hard way. And of course, the contrarians, they will burn themselves out of existence. Once humanity becomes more pragmatic, like really more pragmatic than some of us are already, you'll actually understand the best way to deal with communism is to burn it out. Let it collapse. Right? Let them. All these people who want to be communists, just send them to communist countries, and they will come crying as refugees. They'll soon swim across, you know. And again, none of this would have happened if the Democrats had stopped, just not bought into the globalist agenda to make people happy. But they couldn't help themselves because they're pathetic. They just want to be loved. They just want more and more attention. And eventually, there's never enough. Now, thank you for watching. Things are going to get better. This is the painful growth period of a new civilization. So watch as new civilization starts to take hold and starts a more pragmatic, a more practical approach, and a rejection of sexual politics and rejection of liberal arts and the idea that liberal artists who make millions of dollars must get tax benefits. All these things mean nothing, There's no glory in destruction. And these things are going to take hold. And these things are going to take hold over time. And all the so-called revolutionaries who are merely glory chasers, they're pathetic. They're dinosaurs. Now, yes, they have power for now because the naive youth, but the naive youth will eventually learn there is only capitalism. It's not some magical system. It is just a description for economics, natural economics. So thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and please support the channel. Now you can support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links in the link tree. Don't forget about my Kickstarter. And I appreciate each and every one of you. See you in the next video, and bye for now.